Hello, welcome to the video. My name is Alexa, and I'm an anthropology major. I always wanted to conduct a video essay and post it on YouTube. So I figured, why not use one of my interests and turn that into a paleopathology project? And that interest is Doom, from Modern Iterations. Why Doom? As you can see from the footage, there's a lot of bone breakage, and throughout my time on a paleopathology course, I saw a lot of broken skulls and fractured bones. They weren't real, just 3D prints of real-life injuries. Once my professor explained the topic of head trauma with the shotgun-induced skull, I had flashbacks to Doom 2016. If you cannot headshot an enemy in Doom with your shotgun because you ran out of ammo, then the next best thing is to use your fists or a blade if you're playing Doom Eternal. This switch is a game mechanic known as glory kills. An epiphany snapped in my mind once I realized, through anatomically detailed animation and close-up cinematography, Doom's glory kill mechanic can introduce users into the digital exhibition of perimortem blade and blunt force trauma. Before the analysis, it's important to know bone trauma fundamentals. Trauma is an injury caused by external forces, so any bone loss or bone breaking caused by infection does not count because it is internal, back to outside forces. A principle used to approach bones is called Wolff's Law. According to Wolff's Law, a healthy person's bone will adapt to heavier loads, remodeling until it is stronger and resistant to heavy weight. Like the song, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger" because of gradual resilience. These heavy loads that cause stress on the bone come in different forms: compression, tension, torsion, bending, and shearing. Compression is pushing down on the bone until it abruptly cracks, often seen in fractured skulls. Tension is pulling the bone. With enough force, there will be cracks, and it is far more common with accidents. Torsion is a lot like tension. The only difference is instead of pulling, fractures happen when one end of the bone is twisting. Bending happens when impacts hit the bone side at a right angle. And finally, shearing happens when two pieces slide in opposite directions because of something sharp like a sword. All these forms can be found in a perimortem state. Perimortem means injuries were inflicted the moment someone died, not too long before they could start healing, or immediately after death. Now that I explained the basic information on bone trauma and what perimortem is, that begs the question. Doom is not a replacement for VR experiences that use computed tomography at universities and labs. At the end of the day, modern Doom is full of games with high-fidelity art directions. However, its glory kill mechanics works as a compelling pedagogical analogy for perimortem trauma. It aligns with the University of Bern's Vertopsy project. What they're trying to establish is an observer-independent objective and a reproducible forensic assessment method using modern imaging technology, eventually leading to minimally invasive virtual forensic autopsies. These goals were made by forensic paleopathologists and radiologists who do autopsies for a living. So, just like how CTs allow paleopathologists to non-destructively visualize skeletal morphology, the animations in Doom's glory kills provide an illustrative real-time pedagogical representation of radial fractures and plastic deformation. This effectively highlights the transition from biological vitality to structural failure in a way static dry bone cannot. For this analysis, I'm using CamelWorks frame-by-frame glory kill footage to pinpoint bone failure details. Although the NPCs are zombies, I chose them for human bone anatomy, and by the game's logic, demon energy is preserving the bones, so the bones are at a similar vitality state as a living person's skeletal structure and continues to serve as a valid proxy to perimortem trauma. With the glory kill here at the 257 mark, it shows a neck being pulled and snapped out of place alongside the upper cervical vertebra. One would think of extreme spinal column displacement. Many, if not most, fatalities include the snapping, tearing, or twisting of the neck and spine. The pulling and snapping action functions as a real-time exhibit of tension lines and biomechanics described by a team of forensic anthropologists, radiologists, and anatomists. According to the team's 2020 study on documenting perimortem long bone fractures with CTs, a CT can show tension lines close up. The visualization, quote, may contribute to the understanding of the biomechanics behind a fracture and may help to reconstruct the impact point and direction of trauma. This would especially be useful during fractography, which is the study of fracture surface morphology and its relationship to crack propagation. End quote. Let's look back at the footage. It demonstrates fractography with a path of least resistance through the upper cervical vertebra. And unlike a static picture, anyone can grasp the idea of tension and torsion leading to the snap. Thus, we have an instructional tool that tells paleopathology students to bridge knowledge gaps between skeletal morphology and the high-fidelity art direction. Students will be able to bridge the gap with the shared trait of enhanced resolution, telling us to investigate CT scans with enhanced resolution for the equivalent of physical dissection. Now, the glory kill in 251 shows a humerus experiencing blunt force trauma, where the lower arm bends unnaturally while the humerus fractures into two pieces. Since glory kills often twist major limbs into unnatural directions to shatter bones, this is a mechanical failure of the limb skeletal structure. A constant bending moment at the central part of the shaft is shown within the game, and a 2013 study on plastic response. Quote, plastic response was considered as the distortion that occurs when the bone enters the plastic phase, and deformation from external forces becomes permanent, resulting in an altered morphology of the bone. End quote. Biomechanical simulations look at load conditions to investigate Wolff's law from a side impact or twisting force. We can link that to the action that our avatar, the Doomslayer, did to the humerus. The Doomslayer's bending and torsion action, plastic phase on the humerus, and mechanical failure serves as a unique indicator of biological vitality because high energy was needed. Biological vitality distinguishes perimortem from postmortem trauma since postmortem bones that obtain marks way long after death have brittle and dry attributes, not to mention the smooth edge surface from the fracture. The gruesome bone penetration from the glory kill draws paleopathology students back to pathophysiological reconstruction. They will easily understand that high-fidelity engines will allow them to explore violent simulations without the risk of re-traumatization via tools. I will note one more example from the 229 mark, where a retractable blade punctures through the ocular cavity and the back of the skull. The crunching sound effect functions as an auditory proxy for radial fractures, which those usually result from penetrating injuries. As for visual, the ocular skull scene highlights how imaging helps the analysis of complex facial fractures. A team of medical doctors at the University of Bern with specialties in forensic medicine, diagnostic radiology, neuroradiology, and clinical research said, quote, imaging is a great use in analyzing and visualizing complex fractures in inaccessible regions of the body, e.g., in fractures of facial bones. The face is usually exempt from dissection out of consideration of the relatives, and precise evaluation is hindered. End quote. Surgeons and a researcher at the Academic Medical Center in Amsterdam further validates the use of imaging in a game setting. Quote, video games have been shown to increase visuospatial and attention skills. End quote. And these two aspects have been associated in the manual use of instructions, also known as laparoscopic handling performance. Back to the footage one last time. The auditory representation of radial fractures serves as a digital surrogate by providing a student with the ability to put two and two together. A student would have learned from their course material that a dynamic force is necessary to create these sunburst-shaped lines. The crunch sound reflects the first shearing action as the blade shifts the pieces, which immediately triggers tensile failure in the form of radial fractures. The slayer's action shows a transition from local tissue shearing to widespread structural collapse in the cranial area. With virtual simulations that include imaging, students will get a more thorough sensory picture on radial fractures in a perimortem situation than they would from a static dissection that states, quote, and there will be a crunching sound, end quote. Doom's Glory Kills facilitates stealth learning, an educational approach using non-traditional activities to prepare the visual spatial skills needed for real-world surgical and forensic applications. While Doom is an entertainment title, it's a compelling introduction to a university's serious games and immersive virtual reality in paleopathology. The high-fidelity engines that render the visuals provides a foundational exercise in identifying dynamic trauma, such as the biomechanics and skeletal morphology that is difficult to capture in real-time perimortem situations. The high-fidelity 3D engines can be used in the close-up visuals of forensic simulations, allowing anthropology courses to leverage a real-time, non-destructive learning experience that traditional methods lack. These digital reconstructions offer a level of visual attention and knowledge retention that allows students to analyze basic trauma patterns. As a result, their diagnostic skills are enhanced to meet peer-reviewed digital forensic standards.